What you're about to hear in this story is a boy surviving his own narcissistic mother growing up in South Africa. This video goes beyond mere storytelling, and at the end I will tell you why this story matters to you in your own life. I'm Dylan Moore, and this is the Volitional Science Network. Some time ago, I made a video entitled How to Deal with Narcissists. A little while after I made that video, I received an email from a guy in South Africa. And I've been wanting to read this email for a while because information like this needs to get out there, because people who haven't particularly dealt with narcissism in their family growing up, they don't recognize it when they see it in somebody else. Because the narcissist is this like masterful actor at making themselves look like they're never at fault for anything and that somebody else is at fault, even though that narcissist may be literally torturing. I mean, in terms of physical torturing that other person when you're not around to see. And they're so convincing that everybody just believes them. So I want to read somebody else's account because I thought mine was terrifying. I don't know if I have anything on this, so let me get into it. Hi Dylan, this is blank, I'll leave the name out. I just watched your video on how to deal with narcissists and I would like to reach out. Thank you for making the video. I recently woke up sobbing in the early morning hours after I realized what a hellhole my childhood was. I realized this from constant nightmares. My subconscious was trying to make me realize this for years, but I guess I was still hoping I wasn't a victim. I was trying to believe that I had a perfect childhood and everything was okay. And I don't know why I did this, because looking back, it did really stint my growth. I'm 29 years old. My mom is unquestionably a narcissist, probably a sadist, and my father is an enabler. One of my first memories is my mother beating me with my pants down on the naked ass after me and my friend, both 5 years old, destroyed some dried wheat that she had decorated that she had as a decoration in the living room. We were just playing, tearing the seeds off the wheat. My friend was hiding behind the couch. Oh yeah, we were just playing, tearing the seeds off the wheat. I guess they must have been, you used the word tearing, but I'm guessing that they just did something like this off this wheat that happened to be in the living room. My friend was hiding behind the couch while she was beating me. Both us boys were crying. I think she was screaming hysterically. This later turned into a joke. She would constantly bring this up. The boy behind the couch was saying through his own tears, "Have you finished beating blank now, Auntie? Can I come out again?" Even telling as a joke to his parents. So the friend who was behind the couch crying even later told this as a joke to his own parents. And then he has in parentheses, he never came to visit us again. I noticed the same phenomenon with your story, that's my story, where these narcissists will try and humanize, with great success sometimes, their atrocities with humor. I'll mention this a little more as we go. The next memory, I was 7, we were as a family visiting another family. Us kids were elated. We were so happy because the school holidays had just started. I can still remember how alive I felt. These people were rich and they had a computer. I was obsessed with computers and computer games. When it was time to go home, I wanted to stay with these friends and sleep over because I didn't want the fun to end so soon. It was the school holidays after all, right? I asked if I could stay. Their parents said yes, but my parents said no. I was being a burden again. In parentheses, this is a common theme, me being a burden. After trying some reasoning and bringing up the valid argument that school holidays have just started to no avail, I started to cry. Not throwing a tantrum, just an emotional response. I was really disappointed and I cried. On our way home, my mother told my father that this was unacceptable. To this very day, I still don't know why to any rational human being this was acceptable. Turns out I had to be beat. My father took me to my room, took out a plank with the writing "State Secret" on it, that's weird, and started chasing a hysterical me around the room, trying to get me to stand still so he could beat me. I was terrified and had an out-of-body experience. This scarred me for life, and I think it broke my spirit. I remember in the coming days as a 7-year-old boy thinking back on this and how I could almost not believe that it happened, like it was something monstrous. Soon after this, I developed a dark, scary fascination with the death penalty. Oh, I wonder where that connection came from. I would constantly shame and execute my toy action figures. I think that a dark side in me awoke that day of the plank beating. I also started to believe that I was going to hell for eternal punishment. So, I want to pause here. I think you're starting to see, I haven't really given my own commentary yet, I think you're starting to see the development of this, where, okay, at this point we've only have 2 stories of 2 separate beatings. The thing that really starts to give away the narcissist is the fact that they made a joke out of it. That a woman who was able to violently and viciously punish somebody, a 5-year-old, beating them for, like, ruining some wheat. Like, okay, it was your thing that made the living room pretty, but, like, wheat is one of the most plentiful food resources that exist. You can just get another one and put it there, right? And then turn around and joke about it the rest of his life. Oh yeah, you remember that time when you were a boy and you did this is what my mom used to do to me after she would just, like, ruthlessly punish me for something as innocuous as what this guy did, pulling some wheat seeds out of some wheat. Oh yeah, you remember that time when you were a boy and you did this thing and you were so silly and you were so stupid? It was just this constant opportunity to bring up and remind me that I deserve the humiliation whenever we're in front of somebody else. So you're seeing the same thing here. And that for this second example, how the mother told the father that it was that this behavior was unacceptable for him to want to stay at the friend's house. This is the careful thing to miss. So for the narcissist, I explained this in my other video. Any deviation from the narcissist's thought process, like I want them to do this or I want them to do this, if they show any sign, not even of disagreeing, but simply having their own ideas about it, having their own thoughts about it, having their own identity, the narcissist will see this as rebellion worthy of the most violent, vicious punishments in order to correct the behavior. So keep that in mind as I keep reading this. When, at 7 years old, boy wants to stay over at a friend's house. Mom says no. Now, whether or not maybe the mom had a good reason, maybe she didn't. I have a tendency to believe him that she didn't. And then he cries, makes her look bad. This makes her look bad. Now suddenly she's not perfect in front of somebody else. So what's the punishment? She's even too lazy to do it. My mom was like this, fucking lazy as shit. Even she was too lazy to do it. Father, husband, you need to beat the shit out of my son because I'm too lazy to do it and I can't handle this. I'm controlling all these pieces to do what I want. And the father, I don't know from the story, so we don't know from the story so far. Is he a narcissist himself, or is he just a blind pawn that does whatever this woman says? Proceeds to beat the shit out of his 7-year-old son with a plank for wanting to stay over at a friend's house. So going back to what he was writing, I also started to believe that I was going to hell for eternal punishment. I don't know why I started to believe this, or even if it was directly linked to the irrational execution with the plank. I am just stating it chronologically. There was no rational reasoning behind it when I think back. My mother would talk about heaven and hell a lot. Oh, so did mine. Woohoo! We're also in a very strict Protestant church where the subject of hell came up a lot. I wonder how many narcissists attended that place. I started to have panic attacks during the night. I would wake up screaming hysterically. It is only now that I think these attacks were, he uses the term domino triggered. It is only now that I think these attacks were domino triggered by the plank beatings. My mother would threaten telling my father about certain things, like it was unacceptable that you cried because you were 7 years old and couldn't stay at your friend's house. My mother would threaten telling my father about certain things that I did if I did not obey her blindly. This is exactly what I'm saying. It's not just you do what I said, you don't question, you don't hesitate, and you don't have your own thoughts about it. Even hesitation suggests that you might be thinking about something else, and that is outright rebellion to the narcissist. These panic attacks continued way into my teens. They sent me to a therapist, but immediately stopped the therapy when the therapist started to blame my mother. So, this is, son, you're a problem for us. So we're going to send you to that person who fixes this problem that you're creating for us. Oh, that person is saying that we also might be the problem? Well, they're the problem too. Well, we'll just surgically extract this from the situation. Going back. Another small child memory. We were on vacation. We had a very small bathroom. I was peeing while my mom was in there running a bath for her. I accidentally got pee on her leg. I remember how she threatened to tell my father about this, and then I would get really scared thinking about the plank incident. I realize now that by obeying, my brain was trying to protect me. Yes, this is exactly what's happening. This is how, there's the stereotype, and I mean, it's real. There's the personality trait of the yes man who just agrees to everything that you say in order to make you happy in the moment. I think the majority of them come from narcissistic households where if you didn't make the person happy at that moment, without hesitation, blindly obeying, vicious, horrible, physical, violent punishments would immediately ensue. Because that first major beating was so fucking irrational, she could basically make my father beat me for anything. This is so important. Because that first beating was so fucking irrational, by setting the precedent that you can be beaten, he can be beaten, all right, or whoever, over something so innocuous, and honestly, it's nothing. He was beaten over absolutely nothing. Because that first major beating was so fucking irrational, the precedent has now been set so low that she can command a beating out of everything, because the husband, again, we don't know at this point in the story if we're going to know if he's a narcissist or not, but we do know at the very, very least, he's a mind slave to this woman who will viciously commit child abuse for no reason. Our rooms had to be extremely tidy or my mother would have a fit. The reason for this is if anybody else saw your room, it might possibly reflect that she isn't perfect and she can't have any of that. So it's your fault if she is deemed unperfect by somebody else. I was beat for this too, but never in the same degree. They always tried to make light of these tidy room beatings. Like it is just taking one for the team, the happy family team. This is exactly what I said. You're taking one for Team Mom. This room might vaguely sort of suggest, if on the off chance that someone actually saw it, that Mom isn't perfect. In fact, it might remind her that somebody might think that when she sees it. So in order to help Team Mom, you have to be beaten. And, that's okay because it helps Team Mom. So we're cool. One time, my mother snuck into my room while I was a teen and found piss on my toilet, or he must have had his own bathroom, and found piss on my toilet early in the morning while I was sleeping. You miss sometimes. She sent my father to beat me. Other kids got coffee in bed. I got beat in bed. My father then admitted that he believed it was wrong, but he did it anyway. Oh, so he's not just a slave, he's a cowardly slave where, hey, son, secretly, I know that this is wrong and you shouldn't be having to go through this, but I'm too much of a pussy to tell her no. So here comes the plank. Fuck. Once or twice, my mother got so upset that our house was not tidy enough that she had to go on vacation alone. We were such monsters in not keeping her house clean. It's her house. Did you guys notice this? Before it was take one for the family team. Now it's her house. My mom did the same thing as well. Anytime that she wanted me to do something, it was our house, and we all had to work together in order to contribute to the family. Whenever she wanted me not to do something, it was her house, her rules. This is also something really important to keep in mind about narcissists, where they'll tell you something, and as the people pleaser that you have been turned into, you're trying to follow the rules that the narcissist gave you, but those rules are a trap, right? They're going to change the rules at any given second, and you're going to be like, what the fuck? I was just told that this was the rule yesterday, and I was following the rule. What happened? Yeah, it's because it's like a fucking Soviet government system. Oh, the law this year was the reason that you're going into jail next year. Haha. It's a trap. It's set up that way that you're always wrong no matter what. We were such monsters in not keeping her house clean that she had to separate herself from us until we all agreed that we will keep it tidy again. The clean had to be separate from the unclean. I'm going to read that again, because I'm not sure if this guy even recognized the depth of that. The clean had to be separate from the unclean, just like your mother had to be separate from you. God, that's fucked up. To continue, I wish she had never come back, but the abandonment did make me feel really guilty, because it's all your fault. Nothing is ever her fault. And I get the same guilty feeling typing this out now. Same sensation. When you're a kid, you're really starting to get the grooves in your brain. Your personality is taking hold on something specific. And this sort of thing gets conditioned into you. He's 29 years old, and you'll see later that he's moved out of the country. He's very far away from them. He's 29 years old, and he can't even write me a message without feeling the guilt that his mom instilled into him. And that was the point from the beginning, of course. You shall be my slave forever. At about 15 years old, I started to develop an incurable skin disease. At this point, it was still nothing. My nose was just a bit red, but my mother made a massive thing about this, taking me to see multiple specialists. I was a really good-looking kid, but this made me believe now that I was actually ugly. Girls did not like me because it was so obvious that I was ugly. Actually, girls did not like me because I was so insecure. Even though I was good looking, I wasn't good looking enough for them, for the emotional drain of someone with zero self-esteem. Exactly. This started to spiral out of control. And, I mean, the reason why the mom's freaking out about it is, once again, if you, because you have her genetics, or this guy has her genetics, and if this is being seen, there's some red on the nose, once again, it's some sort of evidence that she might not be perfect. That's why she's freaking out about this. The more I believed I was ugly, the more the skin condition got out of control. Stress. I realize now that it is an autoimmune disorder triggered by stress. But what is worse, the more my skin broke out, the worse I got treated by my mother. Oh gee, what did I just say? We were a family of good lookers, but now I was shaming the family with my disease. Fuck, it's like I just said it. At this point, I was 16 years old. I was an absolute emotional wreck. We could have been in the same club, dude. I just remember when I was 16, I was afraid to eat in front of people. I had this crazy emotional hang-up about eating, and I think it had to do with the fact that I was terrified of the dinner table and the way that my mom would make me eat, because at the dinner table was the only place I couldn't hide. I had to sit there and finish the food, and she would often make food deliberately because she knew I didn't like it. There was even times, I remember one time specifically, she asked me, hey, do you want this or this? It was like peas or carrots for dinner, and I'm like, I'm thinking I don't really like peas, so I said I'll have carrots, and she goes, oh, well, you're getting peas. And it's like, well, the fuck did you ask me that for? And I was so insecure and so strange about food. I was embarrassed to eat in front of people. I was embarrassed to tell them I was hungry, and I was embarrassed to show any interest in food. How does that make any sense? I've never seen that in anybody else ever. And whenever I've told anybody about it, they're like, what? How? I've never even considered that to be a thing. Well, because I was a complete fucking emotional wreck, and my mom was so abusive that she was able to take something that's, not only, I mean, it's part of what you need to live, right? But food, for humans, largely is a social activity. And the social activity for me was so terrifying because it was like 40 minutes that my mom, I couldn't hide behind anything, just got to sit there and grill me. Because that's what she would do, and I'm wondering if I haven't read this email in a while. I wonder if we're going to see this down later, is that the narcissist pries. Because any information they get on you is simply ammo that they're going to use against you. So my mom would just sit there and ask me question after question after question after question because she was looking for a reason for punishment. And I became this pro at being very skillfully either able to give vague answers, or B, make up stories that I know would lead her in a place where she couldn't really grasp anything to punish me. Because, again, she was lazy. Eventually, if I didn't give her enough real information, she would literally make up stories about me and punish me. And I also remember specific instances where she would make up a story, punish me, find out later, or have the evidence come about later that it was so obvious that she had made it up, that what she punished for me wasn't true. She would say the punishment will still stick because I need to be consistent. Yeah. You need to be a consistent, violent, vicious psycho cunt. Going back to the guy. At this point, I was 16 years old. I was an absolute emotional wreck. The panic attacks came back. I couldn't focus on any schoolwork. I was just too anxious. I was a really smart kid, but I just lost the discipline to sit down and do homework. Part of the pressure was I had to go to medical school. In South Africa, we now find out he's from South Africa, it is almost impossible to get into med school if you are white and a man, and I could feel the pressure. But I thought South Africa was full of white supremacists and the patriarchy. I could not socialize enough because we were not allowed to see friends during the week. So I was bored out of my fucking mind. I would listen to music for hours and would fantasize about getting my life back in order. I would play video games. It sounds like he might not have had them. Being good at something. I guess you would fantasize about being good at something. Making some resolutions and then just never follow through. This was almost a daily hell. No, I bet it was a daily hell. Any time any moment where you may have forgotten for a split second that you weren't in a daily hell is probably this huge palace in your memory of like, oh, that one time that I didn't feel like I was being tortured by Satan himself. That's probably what it was. It was daily hell. I could never follow through. I realize now it is impossible to be productive if you have anxiety levels of that proportion. Yep. One of the things my mom would do if you came to her for help was firstly belittle you, and secondly, give you the laws. Yeah. She loves giving you thou shalt and thou shalt nots. If you would come to her for any help, this would be the basic response. You are just not working hard enough, you have to try harder. Or she would add a religious component. Oh, them religious components. Or she would add a religious component to it that could benefit her. Oh, a religious component to it that would benefit her. So you're saying, this guy's saying that religion's not actually about God. It's about mom. This whole Bible is about how you need to obey mom, and you go to hell and you're punished for eternity for not obeying mom. Sounds familiar. Or she would add a religious component to it that could benefit her. The reason for your suffering is that you are not honoring your mother. I'm sorry for laughing. The reason for your suffering is that you're not honoring your father and mother enough. I would get the same thing. Sans the father. My mom kicked my father out of the house when I was 4. But it was always about honoring your mother. Whenever the Bible came up for me, it was always, you must honor your mother. You must honor your mother. You know the 5th commandment says that, right? The first time I mentioned a girl actually liking me at a dinner table in front of my family and friends, she accused me that every time a girl looks in your direction, you think you're going to marry her. Because, so, I'll set the stage for what's going to happen here. When it comes to puberty in the child of the narcissist, puberty is the time when we finally get our fully functioning bodies and brains. I know it's like 25 and in some case 27 for men before like they're fully developed, but by the time we hit puberty, we have full access to sexuality, and we have we begin to have access to moral considerations, and we begin to realize that we have to start taking our own ideas, and we're responsible for our own actions. Now, if you're responsible for your own actions, that means you're thinking for yourself. So first of all, they have to deny everything about you becoming an adult. And which is, they'll often embarrass you, maybe about pubic hair, maybe about your voice cracking, maybe about the fact that your Adam's apple is wonky compared to the size of whatever you got going on. And they have to do this in order to belittle you down, to not allow your ego to grow to the level that it's supposed to be at when you hit puberty, when it's like, okay, it is time for me to start being an individual human. No. And having a romantic relationship, first of all, is more of that. It's more of, hey, I need to start interacting with other people. But second of all, you might bring a girl home that sees that I'm fucking nuts. Just like before, you can't have any friends over because you might bring a friend home that sees that I'm fucking nuts. So, going back to this. Every time a girl looks in your direction, you think you are going to marry her. I literally never mentioned girls in high school. I had no idea where, prior to this, I guess. But prior to him mentioning this, he had never mentioned a girl to her in high school. I had no idea where this came from, other than the fact that it was pure sadism. Yeah, because you're rebelling against the narcissist. Bear in mind, at this time, I was already suffering from incurable skin disease. I went to a Valentine's ball with the above-mentioned girl. I guess that's a thing in South Africa. She asked me to the ball. Fuck, dude, lucky you. I'll tell you straight up, the only way that I was able to date at a young age was if a girl had enough balls to ask me out, because I was so insecure about myself that I couldn't go the other way around. And it looks like he got this too. She was the head girl at that time. I guess that's like the prom queen or something. I was a year younger. It was like finally I got some recognition. There was a glimmer of hope. My mother told me that I had to pay for this ball for these ball tickets because we didn't have the money. Right. I'm sure that was the reason. We just didn't have the money. Your growth, your flowering into existence, your chance at like the hottest girl in school, fuck that. We can't afford that. When I came home after the date, turns out she and my sisters went out and got a takeaway dinner. More expensive takeaway dinner than the tickets for the ball. Yeah, because it's not that it was the more expensive, it's that you can't have it. Anytime that the narcissist sees success in you, they'll become jealous. And so for this fact, if, I don't know if she's the hottest girl, but if she's the head girl, she's probably pretty hot, the prom queen or whatever. You got one of the hottest girls in school who's a year older than you, and she asked you out? Fuck, I can't handle that. I can't handle that. I am so jealous that I'm not only going to try to take that away from you, I'm going to take the thing that you needed to do that, the money, and go and spend it on myself, because I'm perfect, not you. She destroyed every ounce of confidence I had around every corner. Yeah. If she didn't do it out of pure malice, she came out with a seeming benevolent twist. Oh, fuck. Ugh. My own indigestion gurgles up from reading this. Oh my god, I literally felt that in my stomach. That hit home for me. Like taking me to multiple specialists for the skin problem. I later realized that if you would win her in an argument, it would come back later in some irrational way to bite you in the ass. Again, rebellion, and this is one of the reasons why narcissists are so difficult to spot for people who haven't grown up with it, is because they're seduction masters. They're vengeful, they're seduction masters, and they got a good memory when it comes to this stuff. They'll wait days, weeks, maybe even months to get you back. And anybody watching, when they see what the narcissist does to you, they don't know what happened yesterday or last week or last month that caused that. And they're unable to put together that this person is so evil that they're able to hold the grudge for so long to apply the punishment. And so when they see the narcissist do something like that, and the narcissist turns around and goes, okay, well, it was his fault and not mine because of whatever reason, people are like, oh yeah, well, I guess that kind of makes sense because that's all they saw. They didn't see what happened before. She would talk my friends out of doing nice things for me. She called me a born loser when I was 16. My mom used to call me a fucking retard. Oh man, don't talk to him. He's a retard. He's retarded. Don't talk to him. She talked my dad out of buying me a car, basically ruining my college life. I'm guessing cars are just as important in South Africa as they are here. If you don't have one, you're just not going anywhere. Just after I went through a brutal breakup that had me suicidal. Oh yeah, just in the time when you might need to be like, you know what, I'm hopping in the car and I'm going somewhere just to get away from this house or just to get away from this room that's killing me because of this breakup. No, that's the time to take away the car so you could wallow in your own misery and be reminded of the fact that you are in eternal punishment because this is hell and mom is Satan and you're being punished for the sin of ruining our body, I'm guessing. I don't think he actually says that in this video, but this is what my mom was, and I've heard this from other people, is I was a cesarean section. When I was born, I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, so they had to, cut my mom open to get me out. And whenever my mom wanted me to do something and I didn't want to do it, she would go, "Do I have to show you my cesarean section scar to get you to, get me some ice cream or whatever?" And she'd lift up her shirt and point at the scar and be like, see this, I did this for you." The original sin was the marring of her perfect body. That's what she's angry about. This is an interesting component to everything that happened. We were living in an absolute dream house, but there was never any money. We had 4 bedrooms, we were 3 kids, me and my 2 sisters. When we got old enough, I was moved into the guest bedroom so each kid could have their own room. And we basically started to pretend that it was my bedroom. The way he's setting this up is interesting. Let's see where this goes. I couldn't move any of the furniture or leave any signs that I actually lived there. That's where this went. I wasn't even allowed to put Bible verses on the wall. Oh, you mean if you're taking the Bible, this religion that's so important that you must obey every word of, and you start to interpret it yourself and say, okay, this is my favorite part and I want to use this to guide my life? No! You shall not do that. Because the only reason for the religion, the only reason for the Bible is to serve me, your mother. I think you guys see what's going on with this room. They moved him in. Here's this benign twist he was talking about. We're going to move you into your own room. You can have your own space now, but don't you fucking touch anything. You're not even allowed to look like you live there. When we have people come over while you're at school, we don't want any evidence that you even fucking exist. When guests came over, it had to be painstakingly clean. I wasn't allowed to use the guest towels hanging in my bathroom. So, again, I'm sorry to laugh. What that meant was, I bet there was only a couple places to hang the towels, so when he used his towel, he wasn't allowed to hang it anywhere in his bathroom. When something was out of place in the house, according to my mother, and I'm sure things were out of place even if she told you to put them there. Again, the quicksand shifting rules, the moving minefield under your feet where you're like, okay, I got the map of the mine. She gave me the map of the mine, so if I just step in these places, I should be good. Nope, she moved them. And you stepped on one. When something would be out of place in the house, according to my mother, instead of her putting it out of sight, where she wouldn't be able to have to see it, she would scream bloody murder until you came and put it away. I'm sure, it was something, oh, here's a pen. It was supposed to go over here. No. You, all the way on the other side of the house, you all the way out in the garage, I am going to scream until you come here and move this pen from here to there. Pretty sure that's what he's talking about. Just standing there and pointing at it, as if you were obviously supposed to know that any visible sign of you living in her home is a sin. Well, it was. I told you. You caused the original sin of marring her perfect body, and she can't stand the memory. She can't stand the reminder of it, of seeing you, of being reminded of you around the home. I still dream about that house constantly. This is part of my nightmares that made me awaken to the trauma. In my dreams, it was always dark and rainy, almost otherworldly. A recurring theme is venomous snakes and spiders living in the roof, crawling over me when I am not watching. But I never run from them. I always just endure. Spiders and snakes are venomous creatures. And they're living in the roof, crawling over me when I'm not watching. They're always watching. They're always there. That venom, it's always ready to strike. But I never run from them. I always just endure, because you had to. What else are you going to do? Nobody will believe you. Right? Because here's the other thing, and he hasn't mentioned this. I don't know if he will, later in this email. Is that the face that the narcissist will put on when they're around other people is this perfection that they're punishing you for suggesting that they're not. So everyone at church, because they're a bunch of fucking idiots that probably have to deal with narcissists themselves, are going to say, look at that family. Look at how upright. Look at how clean. Look at how behaved their children are. Look at how great they are. They must have a perfect family life. And if you, the son, were to come up and say, please help me. I am being viciously beaten. My mother is so awful. They hate me. I'm vaguely allowed to live in my own house. So go, oh, I know your mom. She's great. You're totally making that up. And your mom's going to come along, if she ever finds out about it, say, of course, oh, you're making stuff up. You have such a wild imagination. That's not the way it happened. No. And then you get beaten when you get home. My university life was a complete mess. I couldn't get into med school, so I studied accounting. But I grew up dreaming about being a doctor. Not because I wanted to help people, but because of the social status and money that a doctor gets. So for the life of me, I couldn't bring myself to settle for accounting. I had no discipline to study. I was constantly just too anxious. I wanted to be a very rich businessman. I realize now that the businessman thing was my subconscious not wanting to settle for being a boring accountant. I had to find something on the level of the prestige of a doctor because that was what was always expected, and because that is what I always expected and what I believed would finally make my sick parents proud of the socially awkward, ugly kid with the red nose that is too smart in a bad way. Maybe this will forgive my sins. He knows it won't, but he did at the time. I kept trying to establish some kind of business in the economically sinking South Africa. With non-existing financial support from my parents, this was impossible. My self-confidence just sank lower and lower. But then finally, I did start making money online. Man, I felt so proud. By this time, being 27, now it was too late to impress them. I realize how stupid this sounds, trying to impress these monsters, but yeah, it was still there in my heart. Well, and of course, the child's desire to impress the parents, that's biological. That's like in us. You want to impress your parents. So the perversion here is the parents are using that biological drive against you. It's so fucked up. Me almost failing at university had basically made them just tolerate me. No, they've been just tolerating you the whole time, and just tolerate is a nice way of saying it. They didn't want to be direct. They didn't want to directly tell me to fuck off. But looking back now, I was just stupid not seeing it. Now, I'll actually disagree with him here. They didn't want you to fuck off, and they don't want you to fuck off. They want you nearby to torture, because it's a game for them. You are vampiric food, right? You're what they draw energy off of, because this is the thing about the narcissist, is that their ego is so fragile, right? The world has to be in exactly the way that I say it is, and if something vaguely, sort of, kind of might suggest that it's not, I need to attack it viciously. However, on the flip side of that, I constantly need the reminders that I am the center of the universe. And the way they do that is, first of all, they need constant praise, right? I constantly need people agreeing with me. Constantly need people agreeing with me. And I constantly need to be able to manipulate others and show them that I'm the boss. They want you close so they can torture you. I described this in my other video, and I think it's a metaphor worth describing, or an analogy worth describing, is the narcissist is like a hungry dog. Imagine like a Rottweiler who you wake up in the morning and he's just like on you for breakfast. He's ready for his big metal bowl of dog food, just, you know, wagging his tail and bumping into you as you're pouring the dog food, and like you can't even keep him, you hardly keep him away to get the food in the bowl because he's trying to knock you over to get in there, and he gets the bowl and he's like and, you know, eats this much dog food in about 17 seconds. What would happen if you tried to take that dog's food bowl away? Even if it was your best friend, even if it was completely loyal to you, never bit, I mean, particularly you, but never bit anybody, totally happy, great dog. What happens if you try to take that bowl away? It will bite you. It will bite you. And to the narcissist, your energy is like that food bowl. And the only dimension that they see is the proximity to the food bowl, the proximity between the food bowl and their face. If for any reason they think that food bowl is being taken away from their face, they'll bite. However, they want it there because they need that food, that they need to be controlling and manipulative and vicious to others, because that's what, it's so fucked up, but that's what feeds their fragile ego. I was still just a burden, an inconvenience. No, like I said, you were food. During this time, I visited them, and I was staying in the now newly renovated guest flat that they kept their camping equipment. When I left to go back to my own apartment after a weekend visit, somehow I had forgot to lock this cottage. Ooh. Back in my own town, going out with a buddy that Monday night to celebrate me winning second place in an online business competition. Oh my God, you accomplished something. I got a call from my father while we were on our way telling me what a piece of shit I was for forgetting to lock that door. I could hear my mother cheering him on in the background. I just don't have any respect for their things. I am just a piece of shit. Sorry, Dad, I know. You made sure I knew that from a very young age. I would even wonder if the door was actually locked. Because I would bet money in this case, let's say it was the door and you didn't lock it. Had you locked it, they would have found something else to call you and tell you how much of a piece of shit you are. And I mean, I think that this is another example. Again, I'm wondering if the dad was a narcissist or just a slave to this woman, and instead of having the woman's ire and narcissistic tendencies land on him, he would just channel it so it didn't hit him specifically. It sounds like this from the story, because everything that your dad does is just the mom telling him to do so, even if he'll tell you, hey, you don't actually deserve this, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm a fucking pussy. I hope your dad finds that. You're a fucking pussy. I thought of something incredibly mean to say, but I'm not going to say it. Man, I still remember the excitement I felt when I saw it was my father calling, because I could tell him about the competition I won. He didn't care. You were a disrespectful piece of shit. Respect our property. Don't come and visit if you can't respect our property. A week later, as if by some divine punishment, their house caught on fire and burnt to the ground. The only thing left standing was that guest cottage where they had moved all my meager little possessions together with their camping equipment. So I guess the fire burnt everything but his stuff because they tried to extract him from the house. The fire was so intense that the neighbor's windows burst. I found it heartbreaking, but also very ironic, in some sick way quite funny. I don't think it's very sick for you to find that funny. I think it's sick for you to find it heartbreaking. They were showered with gifts and help from the white farming community. They are socially extremely popular to this very day. Yeah, like I said, they're perfect. It's like this inverse relationship to the more vicious they are to you in the household, the more that they're going to put on this perfect shine when they go out and meet everybody else. And of course, everybody else is so fucking stupid they can't see this shit. Ugh. But I can't help but wonder if that conversation about respecting their property was made public, what help they would have received. My business failed again 1 month later. I decided to move to China to teach English, and I had to get financial help from other family members to make the trip. My uncle was outraged by this because he knew how much money my parents had got from the insurance. My father then lent me some money after my uncle spoke to him. And my mother still tries to guilt trip me about that money. Yeah, so remember when you said that you were just a burden for them, they never wanted you around, they just wanted to tell you to fuck off? No, I said they didn't. Because as soon as you're gone, now they'll start lending you money. Because they need to get you back within their purview. Because if you're not in their purview, they have nothing to manipulate. That bowl of food has been completely removed, and biting no longer gets it back. They've got to find some. This is what I mean by they're seductive. So when I talk about the four circuits of human interaction, there's 4 ways that we can interact with each other. We can interact with each other biologically, which is we can get closer or farther away or closer to each other. We can interact with each other on a purely emotional level, which is where we form hierarchies and we either try to dominate or submit to each other. You do as I say, or I do as you say. The third one is we can be logical with each other and we can have discussion and have potentially a win-win interaction. This is opposed to the second option, which is there's only a win-lose interaction. And the fourth option is we can discuss morality and say, okay, what should we be doing? What is the right thing to do? The narcissist can fake and play all 4 of these, I like to call them circuits, all 4 of these circuits like a beautiful, beautiful violin, and can fake them to get that food bowl back in front of their face. So when you're a child, and when you're within their purview and you can't run away, it's all first circuit. Bam! We will physically fucking beat you. There's a lot of second circuit. We will guilt you and remind you every single second of every single day that you are inferior and that you will do as we say. But if I'm out in front of somebody else, or if I'm feeling lazy, I'll graft this super spectacular argument of why it makes so much sense that you should be doing the thing that I want you to do, or bust out that Bible. Let's get into the fourth circuit. This is the moral reason why you need to honor your mother. So when you're close to the house, first circuit is an option. When you can't defend yourself, first circuit is an option. Now that you've grown up and now that you can defend yourself, first circuit isn't really an option because beating you, I mean, you can defend yourself and you're not within arm's reach to beat. Second circuit, now that you've moved away and you're like, I'm done, quit trying to talk to me, it doesn't really work so much because you could just hang up the phone. Now we gotta lend you money. Now we gotta get around somewhere. And so dad lends you money. First of all, dad lends you money because the uncle gets angry and calls them out. Ooh, they're not perfect. Fuck. Give them the money so we can pretend like we're perfect to everybody else. Okay, now that we gave them the money, you're now back in our purview and we're gonna guilt you for it. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Take that fucking money. I think I wrote him this in the email. Take that money, never pay it back. Fuck them. You know what'll happen if they do that? They'll probably want to try to give you more. So that's the end of the article. He says, that's me, still in China, now trying to cover for my childhood trauma. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to reach out, Dylan. I wanted to read this for you to give you the opportunity of how widespread of an issue this is. The person who sent me this titled the email, My Hell. And you probably noticed that there were several times in the video that he referred to first of all, the religious expectations of his mother and the religious understanding of himself, where he felt like that he was going to be damned to hell because of the way that his mother had guilted him and how poorly his parents had treated him. And he said it all when he said, my hell was you're in hell. And like I said, the original sin was in the act of your creation. You scarred their perfectness. Even their, I said specifically the body, but it's also, you are evidence that something about them might not be perfect. If you were to go off and have a red nose. Oh my God, you're showing that we're not perfect. Oh, you used a towel that was in the guest bedroom. Don't show that we're not perfect. So you were living in hell. And there wasn't anything that you could do to extract that because you had already been condemned. It was already over. There was no redemption time. There was no time to get back to Jesus. It's already over. That was the situation for you. And this situation is so common. It's so common everywhere. If you go and read, if you think that you might have a parent like this, if you go and read about narcissistic parents, find some article and read about the traits of a narcissistic parent, you will believe that article was specifically written about your parent or parents, because it is so deadly accurate. The disorder is so predictable that you could write a general article. Someone could write a general article. When you read it, you think they're specifically talking about you. That's exactly what happened to me. I read an article. I'm like, were they videotaping my mother my whole life? That's exactly what she did. And first of all, it's important that we can empathize with these people and we don't contribute to the torture that they went through. When someone's like, hey, I went through this shit. This was awful. Don't be like, oh, you got to give your mother the benefit of the doubt. She did the best that she could have done for you, and you're just not grateful. That's what my mom would say. You're not grateful. You're just not being grateful for the love that they put toward you. No, you're completely. You are not only wrong. You're feeding into the abuse. Stop that shit. Stop that shit. This is so common. It's everywhere. And in addition to that, I want this to be an example where you could start. If you're not familiar with this narcissistic aspect, you could start looking it out for yourself. Because I think in order for us to move forward as a society and ultimately a species, there are certain personality traits that we need to ostracize or even remove from the rest of us. Narcissism is one of them. Sociopathy and psychopathy are two other ones. But narcissism is big. Sociopathy and psychopathy usually get the big brunt of how awful these things are. Narcissism is up there. I think it's just harder to spot because the people are so seductive. They're so manipulative. They're so insidious. And until we as a society stop respecting these people and stop being fooled by their bullshit and putting them into positions of power, and I'm not just talking politically, right? I'm talking like when you choose the person to build your house and you suspect that one, all the bids that you go through, one might be a narcissist, don't hire him. If you're choosing a manager for your coffee shop, don't fucking hire a narcissist, because you know what they're going to do? And I picked those two examples very specifically from personal experiences in my life, if you didn't figure that out. What they're going to do is they're going to start feeding on you. In the example of the builder, now the builder is going to use every single thing that they can do to manipulate the control over the project with you. Whatever, particularly legal tools or building tools, like I'm not going to build until we do this, or I'm going to put a lien on your property and you won't be able to sell it, and all this sort of stuff. They're going to use that against you. For the case of the manager of a coffee shop, they might not do it to you, but they're playing a whole fucking board game of the employees that they manage, and they will have them so fucked up and so battling against each other that if one employee comes to you and you don't recognize what's going on, that narcissist will have you believing in a hot fucking second that the employee is causing the shit. Okay? You need to be able to start recognizing this stuff. We as a species need to start as a society. We'll move to a species later. We as a society need to start recognizing this stuff, because you know the old adage that absolute power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? I actually prefer the Frank Herbert correction to that adage, which is power attracts the corruptible. And again, I'm not just talking about political power here. Power attracts the corruptible. So someone, possibly a narcissist, sees a position of power, whether that's a coffee shop or whether that's a political leader, a coffee shop manager or a political leader, they will naturally be gravitated toward it because that will give them power over other people. We need to be able to identify this and stop letting these people run our lives. With that, I'm out. This video's gone long enough. Leave me some comments. If you've got a narcissistic experience that you want to send it to me. My email's in the description below. I hope this was useful. I hope this guy, I haven't mentioned his name, I hope this guy really gets some help. I've been following up with him, and he says he's been doing a lot better. Probably the distance from his parents, being in China, helps a lot. When I went to Europe, I know of at least one thing I immediately noticed. I started sleeping better. And I literally think it was the distance from home. So distance, like if you got to move to the other fucking side of the world to get away from your narcissistic parents, do it. With that, I'm out, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, please give that like button a click, hit subscribe, write a comment, or even email me some feedback. It really helps out a lot.